this is Beat It with Joe, and you're listening to Joe Mountford. The show is about mental health for athletes, coaches, the support staff, parents, and all those passionate about player wellness. As a Gallup Strengths coach, Gazing Red to Blue coach, therapist, and mindfulness coach, I interview professional athletes, coaches, and those who are working with them. I believe that mental health is vital for performance. So if you would like to know more about the Beat It with Joe Player Wellness Program, to learn to perform under pressure and to know your strengths and to learn how to be the best version of yourself, then please contact me. So subscribe now to stay connected. This podcast is free and you can support it by subscribing to the Beat It with Joe on the YouTube channel. The audio podcast is on Spotify. You can also support by subscribing and sharing this podcast on your social media platforms. My special guest today is Hannah Pearce, a South African women's hockey player. Hannah is 24 years old and was at St. Mary's School in Johannesburg. She was at university at Harvard and graduated in 2022 with an undergraduate in psychology and secondary in mind, brain, and behaviour. She had played hockey for 4 seasons and captained the team in her final year. Hannah was also awarded the Radcliffe Prize, which is the most outstanding athlete from a women's team. Currently, Hannah is studying a master's in social, emotional, and behaviour difficulties at the University of Birmingham. She made her debut for South Africa in 2019 and currently has 41 caps. She played for South Africa at the World Cup and Commonwealth Games last year. So welcome, Hannah, and thank you so much for joining me to share your journey with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
That's such a great pleasure. So today we have got Hannah with us so that we want to talk about dealing with injury as a professional athlete, because injury is very much part of one's journey as an athlete. And unfortunately, recently you had a proper injury. Yes. So do you want to talk about that, or just share when it happened and what happened?
Sure. Just recently on the 11th of February, I fell playing during a hockey game, and I ruptured my ACL in my left knee, it was a shock to me. But obviously when it happened, I knew what had happened when I had fallen. So it was a big shock. It was a very emotional moment. I ruptured my ACL on the 11th of February, had my scan on the 14th of February. So I had a very nice Valentine's Day. I had my confirmed what I had done, but I sort of had a feeling that it was my ACL when I had fallen. And then flew back home to South Africa on about the 19th of Feb, and then had my operation on the 8th of March to repair the ACL. So it's been a very traumatic couple of months.
Because let's talk about what your goals were prior to the injury. What were you training for? I mean, I know you're playing at Birmingham, and what let's talk about the goals that were coming up that you were training for.
Yeah, so I think specifically for the Birmingham stuff, we play in 2 leagues here, which is the varsity league and then the national club league on the weekend. So obviously our goals as a team were to make those finals and to stay in that national league is what it ended up being. So I obviously wanted to, being my first year at Birmingham, I wanted to finish the year, try and get the team to that position. And obviously with the injury, that was all taken away. So that was a bit, it's not exactly the way you want to spend your first year. But then beyond that, with the South African national stuff, there were a bunch of camps and tours coming up. The team are currently on tour at the moment. So that was definitely a goal of mine, was to be involved with all of that stuff for as much as I could have been. And then also there's Africa Cup coming up, Nations Cup. And then obviously next year at the Paris Olympics is also a very big goal of mine.
Okay. So when the injury happened and you realized the severity of it, and the recovery time is generally about 9 months, isn't it?
9 months. Yeah, they say on average about 9 months.
Okay. Emotionally, what was going on for you?
So when I fell, obviously it was a painful experience. It's the weirdest pain. I can't exactly describe it, but when I fell, just the pressure in my knee was just unbelievable. But then, like I said, I knew that I've seen enough teammates do it. My mom's done it. So I kind of had an idea. And when I fell, I knew that it was most likely my ACL. So in that moment, obviously I was just like sort of screaming, crying, doing all the things. And then when the physio actually came to check me, I didn't have any pain. I was fine. I stood up, I walked off the field. And sort of was just like, okay, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it isn't what I think it is. And then did some more assessments on the side, walked around a bit, and I sort of felt that I couldn't really do the turning and stuff. So I was like, right, we're not going to risk it. I'm not going to go out and play again and potentially do more damage. So from that sense, I was quite calm. I was like, okay, this is the decision. Don't really know what's going on exactly. But in the moment, so it happened very early on in the second quarter, and this was a must-win game for the team. So I tried very hard to not actually process exactly what was going on, because obviously I was still on the sideline. My team still had a job to do. So I sort of shifted gears and focused on just like watching the game, shouting for my teammates, and not really thinking about the knee and the recovery time, because obviously I know how long it takes. So I did get a little bit teary, but I was like, okay, just rein it in for a little bit. Your team needs to win this. You need to be here. You still have a role to play. You still can have an effect and an impact on this game. So just stay focused. And then after the game, my dad was actually watching at the time, and he was almost in line with where I fell. And as I walked off the field, like one of the first things he said to me was just like, it's your ACL, you're like done basically. And I just burst into tears as he said that. And I was like, you're right. I know you're right. And this is just like, that was sort of my moment to just process everything. Which was a lot. I still wasn't in that much pain at the time. So it was kind of weird to also kind of put those two things together, because I didn't have that much pain. I was walking on my own. But I had that feeling, and I obviously knew that there was something bigger than just like a little pop or something like that. So it was an emotional day of a roller coaster. Yeah. But I think, when I saw my dad, and he was very much like, I think this is as big as what I thought it was. I think that kind of just, it was just a wave, and then that was it. And then my friend was standing next to me, and she just hugged me, and we just cried for a bit. And then we had a little debrief of the game, which also helped shift focus. But it was a very emotional kind of moment.
Yeah, so I think focusing on the game kept you in denial a little bit, and then Dad created the absolute reality for you that it was a long journey ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, so you went back to South Africa,
mm-hmm.
and it seemed to be quite a long time before you could actually get onto the operating table, didn't it? That seems.
Yes, yeah. The up was postponed by a week as well, which in the end it was really good that it was, because my knee was not in a very good shape to have the up when it was meant to. My knee was very locked, very swollen, sort of very stuck in that just bent position. So it was recommended by the surgeon and also the physio to obviously try to get that mobility and that movement back into the knee, which at the time, obviously I was extremely nervous for the operation itself, let alone like the 9 months that was still to come. So hearing that it had to be postponed also was another huge knock. I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, because I hyped myself up so much so that I was like, oh, the surgery, it'll be done. And then the postponement was like, oh, but in the end, now that I did it the way that I did, I'm very happy that it actually happened that way. Because the knee needed some time just to go back to normal, if that makes sense. Having the swelling go down, getting that movement, that bending, the straightening, all of that stuff back. So it worked out in the end, but it was also quite a knock as well, just like emotionally and mentally, because I was extremely nervous for that operation.
No, sure. There would have been fear involved there. And then when you realized that maybe, well, the dreams of Chile, with obviously that was out of the picture, and your goals had to be renegotiated or relooked at. How were you before going for the op? How were you during the time post the op? Like, what was going on for you that you could share with others? That's real, that's authentic, that was your real journey.
Yeah. So I think, like I say, so this has been my first like major injury that's ever actually stopped me from playing. So I was dealing with a lot of firsts, a lot of like, how do I get through this? How do I how am I actually going to manage to do this 9 months like rehab of not doing like much exercise, of all of that stuff. So all those fears of the 9 months and the dread of having to wait that long and basically starting from scratch, because by the time you actually get your leg moving again, it's obviously been like immobile for a couple of weeks. It's had huge trauma done to it just to have the operation. So kind of that how do you then get back to where you were was also a very big fear of mine of, kind of how I get back to that. But I think before the operation itself, obviously I was extremely nervous for that. So that was my only focus at that point. I couldn't actually think past that. I just had to get to the operation, get on the table, and then see what happens after that when I wake up. Which it was a very nerve-wracking day, I think, for myself and my mom, and well, my whole family, but my mom was just with me at the hospital at the time. So and then I think after that happened, getting through that first week of obviously just the pain of having the operation done, of having the hamstring taken and the ITV and all of that stuff to fix that ACL. A lot of trauma was obviously done to that knee. So just trying to get through just that first week of managing the pain, of just managing, like moving around was really difficult. So just managing those little things, I think distracted me from the stuff that was happening later on, which was, so our focus had to be on that in that moment of dealing with that pain and just that, like moving around the house, like how you're going to actually do the day-to-day stuff.
I know you are incredibly good at goal setting and writing lists and crossing them off and that type of thing. Did you manage to manage your time doing that type of thing at all, even if it was just lists in your head or small goals, small achievements? Would you be able to share anything?
I have a little pink book that everyone used to make fun of me for, because I used to write when I would take my pain medication, just so that I could actually take it at the right times and have the right, because there was quite a few things that I could take. So everyone would laugh at me and I'd be like, well, it's just to keep track, because sometimes the pain did become so much. You were like, oh, I need another one, but it's actually only been 2 hours. So in that sense, I had my little book, would jot down things. If I had to remember something, I would jot it down, or like something to do, or like a to-do list or something like that. I would just jot down little things in that book, and everyone would laugh and make fun. And I said, well, it would actually help me a lot just to keep up with my day. Because that pain, especially in the first 2 weeks, well, that pain, but then also just not being able to actually do anything, just because your leg physically couldn't actually hold you without the crutches and the brace and all of that stuff that came along. Or I was always had like an ice, like this ice machine on me. So like I couldn't really just get up and do things. So it was really nice to have just there's like mini lists of things I should do, or something that I actually, really helped me was having that list. Like before I left my room, I had everything that I needed with me when I left. So having that little list to like check it off before I left, because like walking to the kitchen and then realizing, oh, forgot this, turning around and walking back. When you're on 2 crutches and you have a brace and a this and a that, it becomes tiring. So just
but also, like when I say little goals, I mean, I know straight after you'd had the op, your physio had you up and moving. So those would have been little goals to achieve. And then I saw videos of you on a bicycle a few weeks later, and then you were in the pool a few weeks later. I mean, it wasn't like it was really short after the op. So how would you share that with others, how you set your goals, how you kept focused, your discipline is incredible. So won't you share that?
So what's quite nice, if I can use nice as the term here, is that with an ACL, they've got almost like really strict, well, not strict like protocols, but they've got the goals are set out, like every week you should be able to do this, week 2 you should be doing, week 3. So that was also really helpful to have. So like by week 4 I should have been able to like walk on my own or walk up the steps or like a normal person instead of just hopping along. So that was really nice to have in that sense, to track the progress. I think for me personally, like those first 2 weeks felt extremely slow. Like it felt like nothing was really like clicking, nothing was working. And then by about, I think it was week 3, something just clicked. And then all of a sudden, like I was walking on my own with the brace and stuff, but like that clicked. So then I was like, right, walking's ticked off the list. Now we're going to get to balance work. So like standing on the one leg. So like making toast, I would literally alternate like rocking on a boat between 2 legs to see if my leg would hold me. So it was just finding little ways to reach those little goals that are set out by like the doctor's protocols and like the physio's recommendations and stuff like that. So it was really helpful to have those little goals. It's an extremely frustrating process, because obviously 2 weeks before, a month before, I was lifting weights and running and doing this, and now I was struggling just to balance on my one leg. But I think just taking those, like you said, those little goals of being like, right, this week we're going to focus on like balancing like an airplane with your arms out and being able to not fall over. And then next week we're going to get you on a bike just so you can see your leg can actually do the full motion of going around in a full circle. Like you have that mobility, you have so I think having those little goals, which was set out by the protocols itself, which was extremely helpful, made it a lot easier to obviously then reach that bigger goal of going back to the gym, and then setting me up for those even bigger goals, because I would still like to go to the Olympics next year. So I want to be up and running and playing after my 9 months, which is December, January. So yeah, those little protocol goals in the beginning have definitely helped set up aiming for those bigger goals later on. So like straight line running is coming up in the next couple of weeks. After that, those little types of goals of, so now I'm working towards that straight line running. So when I run, my hamstring, my quad, my everything is good, that I'm not going to re-injure anything. And then
you feel confident
from there.
You feel confident.
Yes.
Tell me, the medication and your circumstances, can it make you feel depressed?
I think it definitely can. I think I wouldn't say that I was depressed, but you definitely have good and bad days. I think, and that's something like advice I would give to anyone going through injuries, just accepting the good and the bad. And sometimes the good and the bad can happen in one day. So you wake up in the morning and you're just like, right, my leg is completely stuck. Nothing's going to happen today. And by the end of it, I was like, actually, I walked today at physio. So this was actually a really good day. So I think just kind of just going through, just letting yourself feel what you feel. And knowing that just because you've had 3 good days doesn't mean the next day is going to be a good day. It's never guaranteed. Sometimes you can have a little dip because you've been working hard. Do you know what I mean? Like you've added in, like after, let's say I've done a cycle, my knee did swell up. It survived the cycling, but the next day I was like, right,
too much.
I don't think we're going to do it today.
Yeah, so I think it's accepting the range of emotions that you go through, that it is just part of the journey. And I think that's the awareness that's great that you can share with others, is that you're going to have the highs and the lows. And I think those small victories keep the hope alive.
Yes, definitely does. Yeah, definitely does.
Did you journal your feelings through the process, or did you just journal your progress?
I just journaled my
little pink book.
I think for me, my feelings some days, like I said, were completely all over the place. So you just sit with them and let yourself feel what you feel. Like I remember there was one day just doing like basic clamshells, which is it's a basic exercise. It works a lot. But like, I just remember like crying through doing clamshells, saying like, how am I going to do this for 9 months? And then the next day I was in the physio again, like balancing, walking, doing all those things. I was like, actually, you can do this. So just rolling through those emotions, just letting yourself feel what you feel. For me, I found trying to track them was really difficult because they literally changed sometimes hour to hour. So I think it would be beneficial for some, but I found just sitting with them and just feeling the way that I felt was good enough, and just letting me just process it.
And Hannah, I know that you had other people staying at the house. How important was having a support structure, distractions? How important is that for recovery?
I think it's huge. I think it helped me immensely. Before I decided whether to come back or not, I was deciding if I should maybe have the op here in the UK and just stay, or go home, or should I do it in Cape Town or Joburg? And I think now that I've done it, definitely going home and going to that comfort place is probably the best decision that I did make, because I had obviously my mom with me, my dad was with me for some time, we had friends staying with us. So I think just having people to talk to, having friends come over for dinner, all those types of things is extremely helpful, because it just breaks that daily routine of like, wake up, do the rehab, eat lunch, do the rehab again, go to physio. So it just breaks kind of that cycle of the normal routine of having a friend to talk to, having someone to laugh with, having like all those types of experience. I think it definitely helps, especially like the mental, emotional side. Just laughing with your friends, just someone to talk to, and just having them listen and accept and kind of just understand where you are in your process, and just give you kind of just boost you up a little bit and give you a bit of a
dopamine highs. Exactly.
Just giving you some confidence, saying, look at you walking up the stairs, like, great. So it definitely helps.
When I work with ballet dancers, injury is very much part of their journey. I say to them, like, what else can you do in the downtime? What other activities could you do in your downtime? And I know you're very creative. So what did you get up to when you suddenly had spare time that you wouldn't have been able to do? So like constructive things that you can do in your spare time instead of the pity party of poor me, you know?
Yeah.
So
I think one thing, this doesn't exactly relate to the activities, but one thing that definitely helped me that I actually got from one of my teammates, because she's also had a knee injury before, she said, get like a little bag that you can then put everything into that you need, because it gives you that independence. So then in that bag, I had a coloring book for just times we were just sitting around. I could literally color in. I had, what else did I have in there? No, it's escaped my mind, but like in there I had little just things that I needed. So like the coloring book was really helpful if we were just like sitting around the pool or something, everyone else was swimming, I was like coloring in while they were doing that. It just gave me something to do. I had a book in there to read. If like people were studying or anything or working, I could just read along with them. But I think something that also helped is just leaning into your other interests and your other hobbies and those types of things. So my mom organized like some sewing lessons for me, so I learned how to do just a little bit more like sewing things, and then I got on like a week-long obsession with like finding things to make, finding fabrics to make, like to sew with, to do that type of stuff. So that helped fill the time, and also was like a new skill to learn. So it also felt like you were like achieving, if that, like for me anyway, I need like something like
exactly, because you wouldn't have had the time.
Yeah, it gave me something,
you know, had you been at university and had you been training full time, you wouldn't have had the time. So it's constructive use of your time, which is healthy for your mind and it keeps you focused on other things. And then when you've got to go back to the rehab stuff, then you do that.
Yeah.
So Hannah, when you've got a leg injury, you have to have crutches, which then takes your hands away. So you can't even go and make your own cup of tea. Somebody has to help you, whatever the case may be. So you are completely dependent on others. Did you experience that?
Yes. So especially the first, probably the weeks before the operation, and then probably the 2 weeks after the operation, I was almost completely dependent on others because I couldn't carry anything, because I couldn't put any weight on my leg. So I needed 2 crutches to move around. And I think that's where like the little bag advice that I got from one of my teammates was actually extremely helpful, because it gave you some sort of independence. Like you could put your phone charger in there, a hairbrush. I had like perfume. I had some clips for my hair, all those types of things in there, so that if I ever needed it or thought about it, I was like, oh, don't worry, I can actually get it. You don't have to run around and fetch it for me. But it also then saved me time, obviously walking back to my room to go find it, or back to the kitchen to go fetch it, or do something like that. So all the little things I could fit in my bag, which did help me feel a little bit more like independent. But for the most part, like if I wanted cups of tea, if I like any plates of food, any of that stuff, it would all have to sort of be moved around for me or to me, depending on where I was. I tried as much as I could, obviously, to like sit at the table for dinner, so it wasn't a very far like walk and no one else needed to like carry the food around after me. But there were days where like sitting at a chair with your legs bent, it wasn't going to work. It was too painful. It was too whatever. So like I'd be on a couch, but I was very, especially for the two weeks after, I'd say I was extremely dependent on people bringing me the food, helping me with my ice machine, like all that type of stuff, because I really couldn't.
And that's mentally challenging when you've complete. I mean, especially at your age and stage, is that at your age you're often on your own, completely independent. You don't need to ask anybody for anything, and all of a sudden you have to ask people for everything.
Yeah.
So that can be a challenge. That can definitely be a challenge.
Is. And I think, so from my experience, it was also one day that I did try to do things on my own, and I actually almost fell. I was actually closing my curtains. That was it. And I tried to reach over to literally just closing the curtain, which isn't that hard of a thing. But when you're on crutches and in a full brace, it's difficult. And I tried to do it on my own, and I actually almost fell, which I think would have been way worse. So then from there, I was like, right, we're just going to, as much as you're going to hate it, you're going to ask for help when you need it, because you do need it. And especially at this stage, it's not worth risking like falling over. So I think that was also a lesson for me, to actually be okay with, please, can you help me carry this? Like, please, can you, like, all those types of things. So I think it's definitely was one of the lessons that I learned, especially in those first couple of weeks, to just ask for help.
Reaching out and ask for help. I think that's great advice. And the other thing that can happen, I would imagine, is you get grumpy and ratty with those around you, and even your animals who you love and adore? I don't know, I'm just saying, were you like that?
Yeah, I think you definitely, like I said, you can have those good and those bad days. And I think on the bad days, obviously there's tears, there's a lot of frustration, there's all those things happening. And I think sometimes when the people do try and help, you just like, actually, I want to try to do it on my own, but actually you can't. So I think having them also understand where you are and just being like, okay, it's okay, I'll let that one slide. It's all right. That was just the frustration talking, or the tears, or whatever it was for that day.
Yeah.
But it definitely does happen. So I think surrounding yourself, but still having those people is still extremely important, and hopefully that they understand where you are in that space of time, because it is just for a moment. You can be extremely grumpy with the day.
Yeah, I think you were fortunate in that regard that both your mum and your dad had played, at a high professional level, so they understand. But for those players out there whose parents are not top sportsmen and they don't understand that journey, maybe just to communicating, this is how I'm feeling, and it's very frustrating, and I'm angry. I'm actually angry, and I'm like, this is where I'm at.
Yeah.
So
definitely. So I also had my days where I would, obviously you still are alone in parts of the days, and those are the days that were extremely hard, because then I'd sit there and like, with the frustrations of trying to do the exercises and all those types of things, and being like, how am I going to do this for 9 months and all that type of stuff. And I tried to like not keep it to myself, because obviously everyone, they knew where I was on that journey. They knew those frustrations. But I think even on the days that you do actually feel like that, like you say, just having someone to talk to, like I would cry in my room and then go to the kitchen and be like, well, just had a little 2-minute cry. I'm feeling better, but like, I'm really frustrated today. Even just communicating that to them, and them just being like, okay, it's okay. Let's do something else. Let's like make some pancakes, or whatever the case was. Just being able to communicate that and being like, right, I've just had my 2-minute cry. I'm feeling better.
I need support.
We're not going to talk about it. Let's do something else. Like, let's like help distract me a little bit. Like, let's fill that time. So I think that communication of asking for help, but also saying like, when you are feeling frustrated, is a big lesson that I learned as well. And it is extremely helpful in the journey, just to voice those frustrations and the grumpiness.
And Hannah, what techniques, if any, do you use to help calm yourself down? So if you're lying in your bed, you're trying to go to sleep at night, and then the flood of emotions comes of your reality where you're at, and the journey that you have ahead of you before you can hopefully reach your dream of going to the Olympics. What techniques do you do to help calm your mind and body?
So one thing that's really helped for me is obviously the list making. I just go through lists of things that I've either done or have to do, or that type of stuff. That usually helps calm like my stress and my nerves. But I think with the frustration that I was dealing with, a lot of the time, like breathing helped me quite a lot. So often if I was having like a little cry, let myself cry and then be like, okay, let's take 10 deep breaths in. You're actually okay. It's okay. You've had your cry. You've been frustrated. Just breathe it out. You'll be fine. Something that also really helped, like falling asleep. It was really difficult because for the first 2 weeks, you're basically on your back with your leg locked in that brace. So it's not very comfortable to sleep. So I did struggle to sleep. So I found that sort of doing like sleep meditations, a lot of breathing techniques and stuff when I was falling asleep also helped a lot, just to calm the thoughts racing through my head, and also just those like feelings and emotions just help kind of calm everything just before going to bed.
And so, did you use a sleep? Did you use an app for like yoga nidra, sleep meditation? Did you use an app for that?
I used Peloton. It's like I think it's an American-based UK. I think they've got a bunch of like workouts ranging from like walking to running to boot camps, all of those things. But they have a specific like meditation like category, which has a lot of like sleep. Yeah, a lot of like sleep. And then very focused meditations, so like happiness or whatever it is. So you can sort of pick and choose, which I thought was helpful. I did a lot of the sleep ones mainly, and then just a lot of those breathing techniques that you get through those. I just used throughout the day if I was feeling like very overwhelmed.
Fantastic. Well done. And I think that's great advice to hand out to anybody, that how helpful meditation can be, and how helpful breathing is for anxiety, for the parasympathetic nervous system, for body awareness, for self-control, for all of that? Like breathing is just...
I mean, sometimes it literally just takes 10 breaths and then you're almost like recentered and you're fine. So it's a very easy way, if you're having like a little moment, just taking 30 seconds to just do a couple breaths and then everything feels okay again.
Okay. Then I'm going to ask you, after during this journey, during your recovery period, how has the communication been with the national team? Have you had this, and your Birmingham team, have they been supportive? Has the communication channels been opened? Would you like it to be more or less, or what would work for you? What would have been helpful? What is helpful?
So I think the communication, the channels were always open from both sides, both from the South African stuff as well as the Birmingham stuff. Quite often, especially going through it, like my mind didn't always go to let me like constantly update. So what I found really helpful was having them every now and then just like reach in and like reach out and then just kind of check in on how it's going. Because like through the process, you don't really think about like broadcasting exactly where you're at all the time. So something that, like the Birmingham coaches were really good. They knew the dates that I was having like the big things, like when I was having the op, when I was seeing the doctor again, those types of things. And they checked in around those days, which I thought was really helpful, especially with like the distance. It wasn't something that was always on my mind. With regards to the SA stuff, the channels were also always open. And our like management staff are really good in talking to each other. So often if I spoke to one, they all got the message, which I thought was helpful because then I didn't have to send 3 of the same messages every time and every week that it happened. But yeah, so I think from that sense, it was really good. Our girls, I know we set up all our Wayne and Sunday, our physio and trainer, they set up a recovery or an injured players group. So all of us are sort of there. So that was also nice for me to see that there were other people that were also going through it and that type of stuff. So it's nice to see their updates as well as then give mine into the group as well. So then it was a bunch of people getting the same message at the same time instead of me trying to communicate 5 different times like the same message. So I found that really helpful.
But Hannah, that's amazing, because then it kind of normalizes, it helps normalize the feelings that you might be feeling, and then being able to share that with the new people in the group. Let's call it that. You know what I mean? Like the new people with injuries, like so you can.
And it was good. So
and by sharing, it can help you.
Yes. So most of the time it was just like an update of where we were at, but obviously those updates coming in were usually like very positive. So it helped me to be like, oh, there is like light at the end of this tunnel. Like I will get there, like this will happen. I will, like my updates that I'm sending actually sound really like positive and good, considering 2 weeks ago I was having an operation type of thing. So I think that definitely helped, like reporting that in, you feel good about yourself because you're like, oh, I'm actually doing quite well. I couldn't walk last week, but now I'm reporting that I can. So that was really helpful. And then there were some girls on the team who've obviously have done knee injuries themselves. So they also reached out to me, which I thought was really helpful and really nice of them to do, because it was someone that has been through it, has bounced back, has made it back to the national team, have played games again at that international level. So it was also that helped add to this I can do it. It's only 9 months. Like you will be back. This isn't career ending. Like you can actually get back to that. So I found that was also extremely helpful. Okay,
I think that's fantastic. So how many months are we in? 3? How many months? 2.5?
We are on week 8 post, so 2 months now.
2 months, okay. Yeah. Okay, so where are you at physically? What are you able to do?
So I'm fully back in the gym. I actually started doing like single leg presses and stuff, I think it was last week. So that feels really nice to actually be doing like exercises specifically for the legs instead of just sort of walking and balancing. It is a massive step considering the trauma and the surgery and everything it's gone through, but just adding that extra, being back in the gym, being able to do, I've done obviously a lot of like upper body work, which has also been really nice, especially for the emotions, for the mental health, to be able to move, to be able to exercise and sweat and not be in pain. So at the moment, we're back in the gym, which is really nice, slowly building up the muscles, which is really nice to see. And then doing a lot of cycling, which is really nice. Like there's no pain, nothing like that. So I also feel like I'm doing some cardio work. So I actually feel like I'm getting really tired and like sweating, which is great. And then I've also added some swimming, both for cardio, but also for recovery, which has been really nice as well. So I feel, and I actually said this at the beginning of this week, it actually feels kind of bizarre to me that I still have 7 months worth of rehab, because like I said, like there's some good days where my leg feels completely fine and I'm like, oh, we can just go run, and I'm like, oh, you actually can't run yet, like rein it in. But yeah, so you definitely, it's been a huge difference in my confidence and in like my mental health and like physical health and everything, that I've been able to actually get back to almost full like ability, if that makes sense.
Function, yeah. And I think I was going to ask you, what would you share with fellow athletes who have maybe just got into the group of injury? You know, like it's 2 months. 2 months feels like a long time. You said 1 week felt like a long time, or 2 weeks felt like a long time. And I think it's about giving perspective and getting perspective. What advice would you offer to fellow athletes who are entering the journey of recovery?
So I think one thing that really helped me is just but just having conversations with your family, your friends, about the process that you are making. So like this week, I started squatting with the weight, and I sent the video into my family group and said, like, look what I can do. Like last time you saw me, I was just like learning how to balance on one leg, versus now I'm like actually squatting with the weight. And yes, it's not what I was 3 months ago, but it's a massive step to where I was last week, or where I was at the start of the journey. So I think just really celebrating those little, like they seem very little at the time, but sending it to a friend, or sending it to your parents, or sending it to a coach, and having them going like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing, like look at you go. Yeah. I think having and celebrating those little processes, those little steps that you've added on, I think is something that's really helped me, and is something that changes my perspective. Because like I said, like you can easily go and be like, well, last time I actually did this, I was actually squatting like 50 kilograms or 80 kilograms, whatever it is, versus now, like I can just lift the bar. But that is huge, considering last week you could barely stand on your own. Do you know what I mean? So I think celebrating those little victories
and documenting them
is
yes,
and exactly, and documenting, so you have your journey.
Yeah. Do you think you could have estimated the impact that injury has on your mental health, like the toll that it has had?
Yeah, so I mean, this is my, like I said earlier, this is like my first massive injury that's actually stopped me from playing. So I always knew it was going to be tough, but I don't think you know how tough it is until you're actually in it. And I think those first 2 weeks, or actually the weeks before as well. So the day after I did my leg, so in February, I was trying to put on compression pants and I couldn't get it around my foot. And then that was it. Then I just sat in the bathroom and sort of cried for 5 minutes, because now the frustration of not even able to put your pants on properly because of the swelling and the sore and all of that stuff, it's huge. It impacts you a lot more than I actually thought it would. I always knew that it would, but I don't think I thought it would be at the level that it has been. Like even the little things can literally just push you over the edge on your bad days.
You kind of brought from hero to zero in that day. Like you at your highest fitness, playing brilliantly, and then you brought to a rock bottom of, I've got to rebuild again from the scratch.
Yeah. So definitely, yeah. I mean, I always knew it was going to be tough, because I've obviously seen teammates do it. I've had my mom go through it. My aunt's actually done her ACL as well. So I've definitely seen it and experienced it. But when you're experiencing it yourself, it doesn't look the same as anyone else's journey. So having that understanding, and actually understanding that it can impact you the way that it is, it's just the way that it is. And you need to, like I said, just have those techniques and those people around you to help you through it, because it is tough.
And I think that's invaluable advice. Support is key. And your goals are still realistic, and they're still attainable, and Paris is still there. And and I wish you all the very best in your recovery, and thank you for your invaluable advice and sharing your truth. I mean, I think that'll help so many people.
Well, thank you. And thank you for listening and for letting me share my truth. I appreciate it.
No, that's a great pleasure. If you would like to know more about the Beat It with Joe Player Wellness Program, learn how to perform under pressure and to be the best version of yourself, then please email the link above and follow the Beat It with Joe Instagram account. The Beat It with Joe podcast is for general information purposes only and does not constitute the practice of psychology, psychiatry, dietetics, or other professional health.